All right, we heard her. Great. Well, thank you again for the invitation to come. My name's Sarah Stone. I'm the executive director at the University of Washington eScience Institute. And I was asked to talk about, I guess, insights from my experiences in developing and supporting an ecosystem for data science research and education on a university campus. And this comes from sort of 8 years of experience building out the programs at eScience, and also from conversations actually with many of the folks in this room who have grappled with similar challenges. I've decided to orient this talk around features of our institute that I think were important for the way we developed and our path to sustainability. Hopefully some or all of these will be relevant to you depending on what you're trying to build out at your home university. Oh, it worked earlier. They said if I stood right here. Okay. Oh, wait, can you go back one? Oh gosh. Okay. I think a little institutional framing is helpful. So the eScience Institute has been around since 2008. That probably helps to explain why we're called the eScience Institute and maybe not the Data Science Institute. So we turn 15 years old this coming year. We're going to have a party. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll try and invite everybody. So this reflection up here was really the mindset at the time in which the eScience Institute was founded, and is a really important grounding, I think, for how we've developed as an institute. So the idea here is that all across our campus, the process of discovery will increasingly rely on researchers' ability to extract knowledge from vast amounts of data, something we are all experiencing. And that we're really oriented around helping researchers to access data science tools and technologies across the broadest imaginable range of fields. So how have we been able to do that? And one of the things that probably comes to the forefront, even in that statement, is this idea of broadest imaginable range of fields. That's a very big objective, but really is something we've stayed oriented around. And that really brings to this idea, this key feature of being a neutral entity on campus. So we sit outside the departmental structure. That has allowed us to have very rich and productive conversations across many different departments, colleges, and schools on our campus. Because in many cases, like for example, when we developed our formal data science curriculum, we don't have a horse in the race. Like we're kind of a neutral entity. And as many of you may be aware, if an initiative comes out of CS or other particular departments, there may be other departments that are less willing to come to the table and have those conversations because of the silos and dynamics that develop on university campuses. This is sort of exemplified. The graph or the image here on the left is our campus map with the eScience Institute's location at the center. And around the time we were involved in the Morse Sloan data science environments that Juliana mentioned yesterday, when that initiative was formed around 2014, the dots radiating out from the center reflect the steering committee members of the eScience Institute at that time. And that was our inspiration for creating our logo. So it really does orient us. The designer would not let us keep all those dots. She said it was way too busy, so we had to simplify, but that is where that comes from. And this breadth is also reflected. We're governed by an interdisciplinary executive committee with members that come from 14 different departments or units on our campus. This group also changes over, especially as new initiatives arise on campus. For example, we built out a data science minor that's more focused on drawing in students from digital humanities and social sciences. And so that also led to an expansion of the community on our executive committee to reflect that change and help to support that on campus. One of the wonderful things about having this broad executive committee is these folks can really kind of be our messengers to get ideas that we're thinking about out into campus, new initiatives and programs. And we also get, they have their ear to the ground and can bring back what's going on in their particular parts of campus in terms of data science needs, the types of questions that are coming in, and how we can support and network what they're doing. We report up to 3 deans, Arts and Sciences, College of Engineering, and Libraries, as well as to the provost. The director, faculty director of eScience, Andy Connolly, also serves as the associate vice provost for data science, which also helps us to get more visibility on campus. The next key feature I want to talk about is physical space, which feels a little funny in our post-COVID environment because our ideas of space have really changed, as you all know. But I think having a physical space, especially when we were really getting going around 2014 and 2015 with the data science environments initiatives across the 3 campuses that were involved in that physical space, was something we all thought very deeply about, and how to create open, accessible spaces to everyone on our university campuses. In the context of that, several of us worked with the university libraries, who are also trying to think about what do libraries look like in the 21st century. And so we're in a former physics astronomy library, but the space remains open to the campus community and houses our administrative and research staff and all the sort of programs and activities that we can fit in there. Some have outgrown that space. And that also contributes to neutrality, because again, we're not sitting within a particular department space. When people come, there's a sense of this, sort of belonging to everybody. Last thing I'll say there, and that the water cooler picture reminds me of that, the idea is, I think, something we're all trying to foster, which is that in these data science institutes, we're often connecting around similar methodological challenges that are going out into very different domain application areas. And so the idea is that if we overhear somebody's conversation about an image processing challenge, maybe that has interesting applications in astronomy, but also in neuroscience, and maybe in CS to develop a new tool. The next thing I want to talk about are career paths. And this is something we've spent a lot of time thinking about, both on the tenure track side, but also on the non-tenure track side, to make prestigious positions for data scientists outside of tenure track. And Juliana also mentioned this in the context of their work, and I think this was pervasive throughout the more Sloan data science environments, but there was a real emphasis on building what we call intellectual infrastructure versus physical infrastructure. And so over the years, we've been fortunate to be able to work with the provost on a number of data science faculty hires. And this goes back to about 2014. And at that time, it was perhaps harder to justify hiring a faculty member who was both deep in data science methods and deep in the application of those methods in their domain, because they may not have been seen as sort of a traditional member of that domain community. Having this kind of support, in some cases sort of half lines for faculty hires, was really effective in bringing in phenomenal faculty who then changed the culture in their departments because they did such amazing work, and that really sort of proved to departments there was a ripple effect that these sorts of hires should be happening across the board. These aren't sort of special hires that should only happen once. And more recently, we've had a number of hires, again, in the context of the data science minor, moving out into more into the social sciences and arts and humanities. We also have an affiliated faculty program. We make the bar intentionally very low to become an affiliate. You have to talk to me for 30 minutes, which isn't too painful. The idea being, if you think you're doing data science, great, we think so too. We want you to be part of our community. That's always been our approach. We didn't want to make it like you have to have, I used to have people say to me, well, my data isn't very big. Can I still come to the eScience Institute? And we said, well, that's not what we're really about. We want to help any researchers who are struggling, regardless of the size of their data or what type of data they're working with. The staff positions that I mentioned, so we have a staff of data and research scientists. In the case of the distinction is really sort of an in-house distinction, in that what we are calling data scientists here are hired and wholly supported by the eScience Institute, whereas research scientists are hired through other units on campus, and they spend part of their time supporting eScience activities in kind of a service capacity. For all of the data scientists, half of their time is spent on continuing to develop their own research. So they all come from disciplinary backgrounds. They all continue to be active in their own disciplinary space. And then half of their time is spent on supporting eScience Institute programs and activities. Many of them have been with us for 5+ years. So that means they're writing their own proposals, bringing in grants to support their own salaries. So that helps to offset our costs in having this kind of staff. And I think it's fair to say we're in Seattle these are highly competitive. These people could all go out of academia and make a lot more than they make with us, and they've been with us, most of them, as I said. I mean, we have a few newer members, but for at least 5 years. And that's that 50% split is really very intentional to make these positions prestigious and valued within the university environment. We've also hosted a number of postdocs. Initially, these were fully funded postdocs, which was a wonderful program. When we ran out of funds to do that, we created an ongoing program by which existing postdocs or incoming postdocs can apply to get the title UW Data Science Postdoctoral Fellow and be part of an interdisciplinary postdoc community where we do supported professional development, and they have the opportunity to kind of interact across disciplines, share their methodological challenges. And because we heard that was rewarding in the fully funded postdocs, we kept that going in this capacity, which is much less expensive, but still very valuable. And we have had 70 postdocs move through the titling program. And you'll see one of the original Moore Sloan postdocs in the room back there, Alex. And your picture is still up here. This is getting to be kind of an old slide, Alex. The next thing I wanted to talk about were education pathways. And I'm going to mention both formal and informal training. And let's see, I'll just jump right into it. So as I mentioned before, the eScience Institute isn't a department. But what we were able to do, again, in this kind of neutral capacity, is to put together a data science education working group. That working group created a framework for what they felt were key components of a data science curriculum. This happened initially at the graduate level, and that created the first, what's called here, the advanced data science option, which was also part of an NSF IGERT, and the option was developed in 2016. The way that the option is structured is any department can instantiate the option. And so you would still, for example, get a degree in oceanography, but you would have an option in data science, and that appears on the transcript. This might at your university look like a specialization or have some other kind of name, but it's worth looking into if you're able to do this, particularly if you're trying to, I guess our approach has always been not to have sort of a data science department or a data science school, but really that data science sits within all the departments, and that each department has different needs in terms of what their students should come out with regarding their kind of data science skill set. The advanced data science option is pretty inflexible. It's kind of the highest level courses across the standard data science focus areas. The other graduate data science option has much more flexibility. So again, that same student in oceanography could take an ocean modeling class as their data visualization requirement versus maybe a more standard data viz class you might take through CSE. We've also done that at the undergraduate level. Undergraduate data science options, I'll just be honest with you, that's a much more challenging prospect. Those of you who work in undergraduate education, those programs tend to be very tight. Particularly in STEM departments, there's not a lot of room for other classes to come in. Those have been successful in what I would call methods fields, like CS, applied math, statistics. Atmospheric sciences has managed to do one of these, so it's possible within other fields. But that really was why the data science minor came into play, because we wanted to have a data science training option for all students, undergraduate students on campus. But as I mentioned before, the minor is really oriented around training students to be more in the role of data science translators. So there's a heavy emphasis both on data science skills, but also on data science studies. And that's what we heard from our local tech community, was that they were more and more needing people in the roles to be communicators between the data scientists and other parts of the company. Because we're not a department, in terms of what we run as programs is mostly in the informal education space. So we're trying to fill the gaps, because many of us, if we're looking for new skills, aren't going to go back and start as a freshman or do another graduate degree, or maybe you are, but so we're trying to fill the gaps where there's data science training needed and people aren't going to sort of have that amount of time to start from scratch. We do that through a variety of different mechanisms. Again, we have a low bar of entry. So all of the data scientists and research scientists that you saw on a previous slide provide office hours. And this is just free consultation for one-off, two-off questions that are coming up. as I mentioned, the data scientists come from a variety of different disciplinary backgrounds. They also cover a breadth of methodological areas of expertise. And we do this in collaboration with other entities on campus that are doing complementary types of office hours, and that allows us to triage and refer across those programs. When questions become more engaging, if somebody's come back for office hours 3 or 4 times, then we might suggest to them that they apply for the Data Science Incubator program. And that's a quarter-long program to be paired and work one-on-one with the data scientists on a tractable challenge in their research. Because it's a one-on-one, kind of a time-constrained program, again, this also sits in a nice space that we often don't get to play in a lot in academia, where it's kind of the middle ground between sort of a few one-off questions and writing a grant proposal so you can pilot out a project and also maybe get the data that you need to justify getting a proposal or funding from a sponsor. These are just a few quick examples of incubator projects. I'm not going to walk through them, but this is just to show kind of the breadth of different types of projects that we take on. Also, in building out informal education, like many of you, we have a data science seminar series. Ours is structured as a university-wide seminar series and really focused on showcasing researchers across a breadth of different disciplinary spaces who are coming together, again, around their data science tools and technology. We also spend a lot of time trying to respond to the needs on the campus community and to develop workshops in that space. We've partnered with Software Carpentry for many years now, and we offer the software carpentry workshop quarterly. That continues to be over capacity. I don't know if that's your experience on your campus. We've been offering it, as I said, I think at least 7 years every quarter, and it's still waitlisted every time. So this is introductory Python and R training. And at some point, maybe we'll hit capacity there, but we haven't seen it yet. We also develop more specialized types of curriculum. So Python, your personal research assistant, was built out recently by our technical education specialist to help draw digital humanities folks into using Python. We find that the access points, even for a training like software carpentry, can still feel inaccessible to folks who don't have much of any background in computer science or programming. We also have a strong set of workshops around helping researchers move to the cloud and a strength in that area. How am I doing on time? 8 minutes. Okay. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay. Next, I wanted to talk about immersive and inclusive programs. I think that's something that we think about across all of our programs. The one I wanted to mention here is more and more we've been working with organizations either outside of campus or on campus to do co-development of the trainings that are needed. And the service that I'm going to talk about here is called Hack Weeks as a service. In this sense, so a Hack Week is not a hackathon. These are actually I guess I could read up there. They're collaborative workshops that are really focused on creating an immersive and inclusive learning environment. They tend to be focused in a disciplinary space. So this actually grew out of the more Sloan data science environment. Astro Hack Week was the first one, and so it was for astronomers, a training program. And it's really, actually, it's a mix of kind of lectures, tutorials, peer-to-peer learning, and then project-based work, with the projects kind of organically rising from the people in the room, and then some hacking on those projects. These tend to be 1 to 2 week programs. We had enough of these that we were doing that people started asking us if we could do hack weeks for them, or how to do a hack week. And so we both have a hack week guide that's available for others who, all the resources that we put together who'd like to do this on their own. And we're also now offering it as a service. And so, for example, we've worked with NASA when they have a new satellite mission and they're interested in building a community of researchers to work on those data and to develop the tools that are needed in that space. We've done a hack week, for example, on the ISAT-2 satellite mission with NASA. We also have them in much broader disciplinary spaces. So, for example, there was a Geo Hack Week, which was really for geospatial, people working with geospatial data, which is obviously a huge array of disciplinary spaces and application areas. Well, I should just say, if that looks interesting, you should reach out to me because we, as a service, this is part of our path to sustainability too. So if this looks interesting or you'd like to learn more, again, the resources are available online, but we're also happy to talk about how we could support you. Like many of you, we think a lot about building ethical and responsible technologies and taking on projects where we're thinking very critically about the work that we're doing and the potential impacts. This is a group of students in our UW Data Science for Social Good program, and they're one of the project teams. And what they're doing here, there's a chart on the wall there that's a 2x2 of stake versus power. And they're thinking about all the stakeholders who are impacted by the work that they're doing and where they sit on that stake power diagram, and then talking about if they are successful in the project, how does that change? So as I've already mentioned, so we run a Data Science for Social Good program every summer. We've been doing that since the summer of 2015. This brings students from universities across the country to work on focused collaborative projects for societal benefit. The projects are sourced from academia, public agencies, and nonprofits, but there's always a deep stakeholder integration in those projects. Oh, I'm doing surprisingly well. Sorry, I didn't mean on the talk in general, I just meant on time. I'll let you judge the former, and I'll just take credit for not being way over time. At this point, I think I'm getting close to the end. We've been really interested in partnering with other universities that are running similar types of programs that kind of sit outside the formal curriculum and are interested in engaging students and training students in doing social impact work. And so we've had an ongoing conversations with about 18 other universities. And about a year ago, we produced a white paper that's a roadmap for other organizations interested in building out data for good programs. It's really done as kind of a decision points, like these are the things you're going to have to grapple with. Here's the things that among our group we all did, recognizing we all come from different types of universities. The things that work for us may not work for you, and trying to just say this is the landscape. Choose the path that might work at your university. We hosted a conference back in September called Learning and Doing Data for Good that really highlighted the student work that's coming out of these programs. There often isn't a good I would say kind of conference forum for these projects because they often aren't cutting edge tool development. What they are, I would say, is cutting edge tool development to deep application spaces. But that doesn't always mean they're super sort of sexy in either of those forums. So there's not always a good place for that work. And we really wanted to highlight the really phenomenal projects that come out of these types of programs. And these are just a couple of sample projects that we've been involved in. Like the incubator programs that I mentioned earlier, these projects often go on to become funded grant work or into peer-reviewed publications, software packages. For example, the Global Open Sidewalks project is now a $14 million DOT project, which is building out sort of sidewalk mapping infrastructure. You've probably already seen we have a real emphasis on service and community building. I think it's fair to say that the way that we managed to get permanent funding from the University of Washington that covers some, not all, of our expenses was because we were seen as a service to the University of Washington community, much in the way libraries or IT might be on your campus, because we really are open to all and we're providing kind of these data science resources and programming. We also do things that probably many of you are involved in. So we support other data science proposals on campus. We're often serving as a network helping people connect. So if they are responding to something like the HDR call, we help them find each other, and then we may either channel that proposal through eScience, or if it makes more sense for it to go through another part of campus, help to facilitate that process. So we're writing letters of support because we are a mature organization and we have a fairly deep bench on the administrative and research side. We can serve and help to provide technical and administrative backbone for projects that are going in. We've also had an ongoing program in collaboration with Microsoft to give out cloud credits to researchers on campus. And those are, again, available across actually the 3 UW campuses and all disciplinary spaces. There's a number of center grants that sit at UW that we've been engaged in various capacities, including, of course, A3D3, which we're delighted to be a part of. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, I think, again, because of some of these existing collaborations, notably with UC San Diego and UC Berkeley, we've also been engaged with the NSF. We are PI institution for the NSF West Big Data Innovation Hub. The innovation hubs are kind of winding down. There's 4 regional innovation hubs, and these are really focused on building cross-sector collaborations to use data-intensive technologies to address kind of pressing societal issues on a regional basis, but also nationally. So example, in the West, we think a lot about water and water availability and fires. I think across the regions, everybody thinks about water, but we think about it maybe in different capacities. And then we're also a PI institution for NSF Cloud Bank. Cloud Bank is a program that's available for particular RFPs that come out of NSF, and now actually for all researchers who have SCIES awards to request cloud credits. If you don't know about that, the Dear Colleague letter that came out more recently allows you, if you have a SCIES award, you can request cloud credits on top of that. It doesn't knock against your current award. If you want to know more about that, just feel free to reach out to me. And this provides cloud services to researchers with a much nicer interface than you may or may not have in your campus. And lastly, I just want to say that we have been very iterative and reflexive in the way that we've worked. We've had ethnographers embedded within eScience since about 2014. And the type of ethnography that they practice is very reflexive in the sense that they give us a lot of feedback about things they think are going well, places where we have gaps and aren't, meeting the need. And that's helped us to be, I think, just really built a culture where we try new things a lot, we change things, we're always thinking about what we might do next. And so I wanted to end on thinking about what are the things we are doing next. And these are probably things you're also thinking about on your university campuses in various ways. We launched an initiative earlier this year called AI at UW. And this is much the same way that eScience helped to create a neutral space for data science and sort of serve as the hub for all the data science activities that were on campus and help lift those up. We're trying to do the same thing for AI so that AI doesn't become something that is just seen or as sitting in a particular college like the College of Engineering, but really recognizing that researchers across the broadest disciplinary spaces are using AI or interested in engaging with AI. And so we did an event last spring called Discovering AI at UW that really brought together researchers from across campus, and we have 10 funded AI ML institutes that also spoke, and we sort of learned more about each other. I think in some cases where we have deep engagements, but there are certainly centers on campus that found new connections at that event. That's also leading to an AI education working group. So much the same way we did with data science, we're now trying to do that with AI and understand, are those really different things in terms of how you structure an education program? And that group will be diving into that work. And lastly, I wanted to mention, we recently received support from Schmidt Futures to build out a scientific software engineering center. I think as we can all see in this room and reflected in the talks, we are more and more dealing with bigger data, bigger collaborations, bigger challenges, and the software engineering needs are apparent, especially if we're trying to produce, reproducible and sustainable software. And so the idea is with the Software Engineering Center is to build a team of software engineers, much in the way we built a team of data scientists who are supporting researchers in building and developing professional grade software. this actually reminds me, I spent the first 2 days of this week at a conference that was hosted, or at a workshop that was hosted by the Academic Data Science Alliance, ADSA, which if you don't know them, they're really worth looking into. They do a lot of community building at the national level for data science at universities, and the US RSE network. And the workshop was around how do we attract, support, and build teams of data scientists and research software engineers in academia, recognizing these are needs we're all feeling. And these are unique, non-traditional positions. How do we get them to want to come to universities and stay at universities and fund them at universities? So that should be coming out. We did a lot of work, and actually real work, and wrote, did some writing. And so that should be coming out next year if that's something you're interested in. And I think I'm done. How did I do? Right on time? Sure, go ahead.
Wait a minute, let's wait for microphone.
Thank you very much for your insightful talk. We have also a very similar, situation. And I just would like to ask you the following. So especially the operating budget of your institute. I think it is very important for the university administration to support your effort. But on the other hand, they also want you to be more like independent and then getting, from external funding. And I'm curious what the balance, or how, so your administration still basically giving you some funding to support hire your data scientists and research scientists, specifically belong to your institute, or you still need to get external funding to support this?
We still need to get external funding. So we have some funding. It covers about half of our expenses, I would say. And that doesn't include the Software Engineering Center. That's coming from a different source. And we don't have, at this point, have any university funding for that, although we're working towards that. And so, but all of the folks I mentioned, they're all involved in grantsmanship. And we did, if we look at all the grants that they're involved in, that actually, there's like a 50-fold return on investment in terms of what the university puts in and the grants that they're associated with bring back to the university.
I see.
So, so that's an argument to make, and I'd be happy to share that if that would help you justify this to your home university. It takes a while to build that.
Right.
Yeah. So you do need some pilot to get started.
I have another question. So you hire, University of Washington hire various, many actually data science related faculty members, tenured faculty members in various different departments, and then so they also associated with your institute. So that's great. But when there's a need to, for example, create a new data science oriented courses, so that also depends on the individual home departments, or you have some say to initiate that.
So with the hires that have had this partial funding through the provost's office, there was an agreement that part of their service goes towards to eScience, and really the service goes towards, it's sort of not to eScience inherently, but to developing data science courses within their discipline. Okay. And so that's part of the expectation. And then there's also the expectation that somebody from the eScience Executive Committee is involved in their advancement process, so that it's ensured that there's alternate metrics for advancement are considered in their, as they move through the tenure process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for the talk. I have a similar question, but I think a very general discussion on data science. Some universities want to have a data science department. Some have a data science at the institute, at a school. And in UW, you have iSchool, you have computer science. I think there are some competitions. Students can, if they choose to do the data science program at your institute, they want to go to computer science. So since your institute has been very long, I want to see your opinion on what's the good different. I think there are pro and con for each setup. So what do you think of a way of data science could go forward at the institute or at the department? What are the pros and cons?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there certainly are pros and cons. And I don't think we probably as a field don't know yet what works best. And probably what works best varies on your university structure and the people who are engaged. I think in our case, we felt like data science, we weren't thinking of data science as its own discipline. We were thinking of it as a very much of an applied set of tools and techniques that were meaningful across all disciplinary spaces. And so that's kind of the approach we took to the way the education program was built out. But there's arguably, the generation of unique tools and the cutting edge work that happens in data science on the tool development or methodological development side of things that could justify having its own department. And I think that might help draw in faculty that are particularly interested in seeing that kind of activity or building that cohesiveness of a unit on campus. I would also say, I think, if you're developing data science programs explicitly or curriculum explicitly, like a data science graduate program or undergraduate degree, there's a real opportunity to increase the diversity of students coming into data science versus computer science, for example. I actually think programs like Data Science for Social Good and the programs that many of you are involved in, they have the potential to attract students. They're driven by the question and the impact, and data science are tools or means to that end. And so I guess I would say, I think there's an opportunity to structure data science programs in a creative way where you could really attract and build a much more diverse community, and that would be a real asset to the work.
Mark?
Since you mentioned data science related curriculum or program, so I'm developing one in our department, which is called a physics plus data science. So at Illinois, we have these kind of like something plus X, like CS plus X or X plus data science. And the nice thing about the X plus data science, where I'm doing the physics plus data science, is that when students enroll in the program, all the tuition dollars go to physics, because we don't really have this kind of setup yet. Whereas in a CS plus physics, it's actually split. So I was just wondering, when you have this arrangement, when students take, I think you called it an option.
Yeah.
So you have a little bit of a different nomenclature, but like, does when students enroll in that program, does the Data Science Institute get any of the tuition dollars, or is it all in the department? I suspect the latter.
It all goes to the department. And that's actually another sort of, you can see it as a pro or a con, depending on where you're coming from, but the department owns that option, right? It's part of their curriculum. And so they can use it as a way to attract students into their department, and they retain the funding associated with those students. Yeah. Yeah, we don't get anything from it, which be nice if we did.
Sustainability model.
That does not feed in here, but it is important for a lot of the way we structure, people in university or structure programs. Yeah.
Hi, I have two questions, if I can ask both. One was, you mentioned the data science office hours, and if they come for 3 or 4 times, then you put them into the incubator program. Where do they go from there? Is it grant writing, or is it spin-offs, or what's happening there? That's the first question.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple different trajectories. Sometimes even if there's a few questions in office hours and it gets to the point where a data scientist feels like, well, this is starting to become a fair amount of my time I'm spending, answering these questions, they might then say, we need to have a conversation about authorship. We need to have a conversation about getting some support. Or like, you need to apply for the incubator program. So I think those are all possible trajectories. For projects that go through the incubator then too, it's not super common, but it's not uncommon that then the data scientist might be written in on a grant to continue to be able to do that work. And that helps us with our sustainability by offsetting a salary. I'm not sure, did I get, or write a grant proposal and then, yeah.
Can I ask the second question? The real quick, so you said the institute reports to 3 deans and the provost. How does that work? I'm curious, who's doing the convincing?
I wish I had a really clear answer. It's not always clear to me. We started off reporting to the 3 deans, and the idea was that helps us get visibility on campus, because those are kind of the 3, arts and sciences and engineering encapsulate, most of the departments on our campus. And we felt a strong tie with the libraries in terms of the way we were building out our programs and in this kind of service capacity on campus. And honestly, the similarity of, our data scientist positions and some of the data management or data science oriented librarians. How it works in practice, I can say, is we annually meet with the 3 deans and we give them a presentation and we write an annual report. The provost comes into play because, which is a newer thing, that this new title of Associate Vice Provost for Data Science was created. And that was to sit alongside an Associate Vice Provost for Research Computing. And that was something we argued for, that there should be equivalent positions for research computing for data science, and that title should go with the directorship for eScience. But that makes it confusing because AVPs report to the provost. So I would say it's one of those dotted lines, solid lines. Nobody's quite sure where it goes. But they are dotted lines in the sense that nobody's sort of supervised formally. That was totally unhelpful answer.
Hi, Sarah. So thank you for the presentation. As you know, I'm director of a Translational Data Analytics Institute, which is a very similar in many ways to eScience at the Ohio State, but is at the Ohio State University. So we're struggling with many of the same things as you, and as the questions are trying to untangle as well. You encourage educational programs, but you don't get but you're not a department, you're not a degree granting unit, you're not an academic unit. You support proposals, but you're actually not a...
We don't get any of the overhead.
Right, but you don't get the overhead
yeah.
because you're not a costing center or the equivalent of that at UW. You support services, but you're not a library in the way that you're a library, but you're not a library. You're not, you're not the infrastructure supporting service. So this is, and we're kind of like these data science institutes, data analytics institutes, whatever the unit, when they become the university-wide thing, we're trying to be, we collectively, right? We're trying to be these, like, hit the education, service, research, but we don't have the infrastructure or the designation to be any one of those. And then they ask to support our own sustainability and have a sustainability plan, which none of the libraries or any academic unit or any research costing center would be asked to do. So how do we advocate for these university-wide data science initiatives, however they're designated, to become on par with the core university services? I think services is probably where it's going more than anything else. Mm-hmm. When they are providing university-wide service.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a wonderful question, and obviously something we haven't figured out because you pointed all the ways in which we're not getting the funding. But I think it's showing value, which is not a surprising answer. But I think, and we do report to I guess this is another line. We talk to the Associate Vice Provost for Research a lot too, and in some ways that's kind of a proxy for the funding that we have through the university. That's kind of who we talk to about that, and I think the things that have been compelling are that the data scientists on our staff are involved in these research grants and in bringing money to campus and tracking how much money is coming in from the projects they're engaged with, and how much, or like that there are these institutes like A3D3 that we have at least played, a minor role in terms of helping to support that, either on the administrative side or helping put teams together. Tracking that and putting the dollar value on it is something that we've certainly emphasized. So I'm nothing that you wouldn't already be doing. We have found that anecdotes can be really powerful in terms of showing in like the student education, if there are, seeing that students, this helps them move into, into the workforce and be attractive in terms of having that data science training. We found some of those kinds of, we keep anecdotes or things that people send us, and our sense is that when we got permanent funding, that was a very important part of the process. But of course, there's not a lot of visibility or transparency when suddenly the money comes about why that happened.
To follow up very quickly, we keep pointing to you and to the Michigan Institute for Data Science, MIDAS, and University of Pittsburgh, right? So they're and Berkeley, and saying, look, they're university-wide, and I know that MIDAS is pointing to us, and so
we
I
point
think
to you, yeah.
I think maybe all of us that are university-wide data science initiatives, and I'm looking at anybody else here who's with ATSA's support should actually provide a statement and go to our universities and say, this has to be university-wide supported initiative. Stop asking us to spend our time on like money generating sustainability plans when we're already providing service which is not counted back to us.
I totally agree. And I think that we're also, there's huge amounts of funds that sit in certain parts of campus. For example, often in the IT space, and a lot of what we end up doing is really doing what's sometimes equivalent to IT support, particularly in the cloud space for researchers. And there's no funding essentially for us to be doing that work. And it's tremendously helpful to university researchers. And so I would love to think about how we could do that. Yeah, and there are a number of these sort of similar sister institutes, as you point out. Yeah, hi.
So since I have a mic, and I want to use this opportunity to thank you, Sarah, and also for eScience Institute. Even though you mentioned it's a minor support, but without your support, there's no such event. And we, in particular, when we were first time to have this experience to propose this big institute proposal, your advice is really helpful for us, and in particular, how to sort out the multiple proposals might come all together within the same university. What's the possible way to coordinate together? That's really valuable, and thank you for all the help. All right, we have a couple hands up, but I think we also need to control the time.
We should get going, right? So let's do
two more,
and then we're closing like
Right.
hand raising.
There's a coffee break. I mean, we will have time to continue after that. Okay,
Yeah.
There's a question.
So yeah, Babak and then Carol.
Okay. Thank you for this presentation. I see a lot of similarities. So I wanted to follow up on Tanya's question. So you were talking about, all these centers kind of band together to make pitches to your institution. So very similar stuff going on in the computing side, research software engineering. And we have a group called CASC, Coalition for Academic Computing, something like that.
Mhm.
And which is basically a advocacy group because we're facing exact same issues that you're facing. I would love to see your value proposition slide that you make every year, which we do. And we try to collect a lot of impact metrics.
Mhm.
And so I would like to talk to you offline more about this, but I just want to mention that, there are organizations very similar to what you were talking about that would be a voice.
That would be great. And I would love to see your value proposition slides too. And I would also like to talk to you as, we're trying to build out this new software engineering center. I'd love to, hear your lessons learned and just touch in on that. Yeah, thank you. And as I mentioned, that this workshop, the goal of that workshop is actually part of that document will be something you can take to your administration that says, this is why you need these people. These are all the places that are already doing it. Don't get behind, that kind of thing, which is, we hope, a compelling argument, right?
Sure, good. Hey, thanks. Great presentation. As you know, I'm directing the data science initiative at UC Irvine. You're kind enough to reach out to us and share some of these ideas, and they're great. We are dealing with similar issues, as you know. One of them is that, as you mentioned, that you guys were successful because you were neutral, and we try to be that, but there is still some areas on campus that they want to take the ownership, and they're doing things related to data science. So one of the examples was, for example, Center for Statistical Consulting. They have some overlaps. So I actually directed that center and then moved to Data Science Initiative. And I still cannot differentiate that, like where are the boundaries?
Mhm.
And there's a school of medicine that they do personalized medicine, that they do a lot of AI in, and there are the same thing in social sciences. So being neutral still doesn't prevent these pockets, these silos of like data science related entities. And one of the issues that we had, like they exist, like how do we work with them? And how do we define the boundaries? And that's been one of the issues that I always say, like UC Irvine, we're fortunate that the statistics and CS are in the same school. So we had an easy start, but we had a very hard time to expand because we have to address these issues that where are the boundaries? How do we work with these silos that already exist across the campus? I don't know if you had similar issues. You probably have to deal with similar issues at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like there are 10 funded AI ML institutes on campus that are, in the vein of the HDRs or the AI institutes. I think I think what we've tried to do there is help to build, where it's relevant, be part of, have folks in our group be part of those teams that are built out in response to those proposals, and not view it as competition, but more as how can we collaborate? What space are you carving out? And in some cases also serve as like an umbrella organization. So the Scientific Software Engineering Center will sit with, it's really going to be its own entity, but it sits under the umbrella of eScience. So where that makes sense to do that, because we really felt that was so similar to what we were doing in kind of this service capacity, but focus more on software engineering. So I'm not really answering your question except for to say we definitely deal with that. And when there are new things, and everybody can feel that tug and that, like, so I think it's constant work to delineate and also to find middle ground, and not to try and not orient toward it being a competition, but trying to, really do the rise all boats thing. But yeah, I don't know, it's not a great answer, but it is a struggle. I think because we started out across all fields, that helped. Versus I think you have, it sounds like you're starting within a few departments and then trying to add. And I think that's a harder problem in some ways. Yeah.
Definitely. I think you guys have an easier time to reach out to other entities because you started neutral. Yeah. We still, even though we're multiple departments, but we're still in the School of Information and Computer Science. Yeah. And that, like that creates some hard boundaries with other schools, like social sciences, like School of Medicine. And this reaching out has been more difficult for us because they don't look at it as reaching out. They think as like they're interfering, like we are a School of Medicine, we have all the data, we can do it ourselves, like so. Right. And I think that your starting point, I think that's been very helpful. I think that most other places, they don't have that luxury.
The last thing I'll say is, as I said at the front, we're almost 15 years old. Nobody was grabbing when we grabbed. Yeah. Everybody's like, I don't know what this thing is. So that helped. AI is harder.
Thank you so much.
Let's thank Sarah again.